Hey guys, hope you're well. Part 2 in the restraining order battle, Mindy versus Zero Dark Tony. And of course, if you want to help with any flight cost or dog care, my donation links are on the video. But I won't bury the lead. The case is not finished. The judge is not ready to make any sort of ruling, any sort of conclusion. ZDT hasn't even gotten the opportunity to present his case yet. So there's still a lot more happening, and 2 more days are allotted, October 10th and October 15th. I'll probably be there on the 15th, but not on the 10th, would be my assumption. And it started off in the beginning, as I mentioned last time in part 1, where there was some stuff that stuck, some stuff that didn't. Stuff that didn't stick was the Mindy uses minors as a human shield. Some other stuff, what did stick, was ZDT asking people to find the autopsy report and then to broadcast the pictures of the autopsy of Mindy's deceased sister to prove that she is lying. And when she was testifying about that, when the mother was talking about that, she talked about struggling, battling through tears, battling through very real emotions, how much trauma it caused her, how much pain it caused her, how it allowed her not to show up to work, in addition to people calling her work and harassing her work and mentioning her name and trying to get information about Mindy's mother at her workplace. That was very powerful. And I think the consequence of that, and that being powerful, is far more significant than the consequence of the other 2 aspects not being that powerful. I think if you want the judge to buy or to take into account one claim or another, the one that she takes more seriously is the one that'll have more weight. Any judge would think harassment would quantify talking about somebody's sibling or daughter and their death in great detail and saying that they're lying. So what happened in part 2? Mindy's mother remains on the stand. Tamer's still questioning her, and it was odd because what Tamer is trying to do is trying to pinpoint the actions of many people. Aaron Smith-Levin, the great Johnny Bravo, Henry Marini, which Tamer called Aaron Marine, DOA, Klee, all these other people. And the claim that Tamer was trying to make is that Mindy was instructing these people to harass ZDT, and then the judge wanted to remark, well, was she instructing? And then Tamer had to correct himself and say, well, Mindy was involved in it and was a motivating factor in it, which doesn't hold that much water. Another aspect that Tamer thought would be effective is Tamer remarked that a chatter named Tiger King said that he or she would be celebrating should ZDT go to jail. Now, and the judge retorted saying, first off, Tamer said that Tiger King was Mindy's mom, and the judge interrupted, and that Tiger King isn't Mindy's mom, but even if Tiger King, who said they'd be celebrating in jail, that doesn't have any relevance. And the judge quickly shot that down and even instructed Tamer to stop asking Mindy's mom about the actions of the Tiger King. Mindy's mom said she had access to that account for 3 days, gave the computer to her nephew. The judge didn't care and said whether it was her or not, you know, that comment is innocuous anyway. And even the judge says it's legitimate if you're being harassed to want somebody to go to jail. So again, you see these little indications that the judge seems to be more on Mindy's side than she is on ZDT's side. But of course, you never know. So that was the big argument, was who is the Tiger King? Other people were brought up. I was brought up in this random non sequitur, and Tamer says, do you know Dodge Landesmann? And the mother said, well, I guess he's casual friends with Mindy. And then I thought he'd mention something I said or did, and then he said, what are magic mushrooms? And it was this weird random, I don't know how he was going to add me. I've never talked about using magic mushrooms. I don't know how he was going to try to draw this narrative, but the judge interrupted and says, how is this relevant? And then Tamer says it talks about Mindy's state of mind. So that's another Hail Mary that Tamer's trying to use, is Mindy might have said, I don't know, but Mindy might have said she did mushrooms at some point, or was in possession of mushrooms, or I believe the specifics was she bought a chocolate bar with some sprinkles of mushrooms. They're non-psychoactive mushrooms, but you can see how desperate Tamer is, because Tamer is saying, well, because she endorsed some sort of usage of mushrooms, therefore she's stoned out of her mind, and her mindset this entire duration of the trial is irrelevant because it's polluted, and obviously the judge is not going to buy. So I don't know what I have to do with magic mushrooms, but I was brought up, and then again the judge interrupted it. So I talked about that's the crux of what happened. I think Mindy has very good momentum. You can see the key lines of defense that were brought up before. I mean, Tamer said all this before, that he feels that there's a gang, a deliberate gang stalking, because he's schizophrenic, assaulting ZDT, and that ZDT is his victim, and ZDT should be the one getting the restraining order. Another stupid thing that ZDT did, before I read the exact quotes of everything, my best version of a transcript, the other thing that ZDT did was he mentioned that he had 2 restraining orders already that were successful. So Tamer was trying to bring up the restraining orders to try to show that there was gang activity, that there were gang directives. But he shot himself in the foot, because what Tamer admitted is that Henry and who I can't believe I'm blanking on the other restraining order, but whoever, Henry and the other person who got Solomon, Henry and Solomon, like, the Tamer admitted that Henry and Solomon got a restraining order already, which indicates that ZDT is unstable enough for a judge to validly rule that a restraining order is needed for not 1 but 2 people, which shows a consistency of character and shows that he is likely to harass again. Since Mindy was not the only person, he has precedent. So Tamer, in bringing all of this up, set precedent, saying, listen, 2 other judges for 2 other completely separate people in 2 other separate cases already ruled that his behavior was egregious enough to warrant a restraining order. So the judge can only think, well, Mindy isn't irrational for seeking this if he has a pattern of harassing people, and enough of a pattern where the judge proves it in court where a restraining order is needed. So completely stupid. So now we'll talk about some of the specific quotes. Some exhibits were being shown, and the first exhibit that McKeon, Mindy's attorney, shows is this video. And in this video, ZDT is doxing Mindy's address. We talked about this before. So this is me rehashing part 1 and 2 and just reading word for word. It says, did you see this video and make a transcript? Mindy says yes. And the attorney asks, how did it make you feel? Mindy says, I felt exposed, intimidated, and vulnerable because my location was revealed. The attorney asks, is that what the video says? Is that what the video says, that this is where your apartment is? Yes. And then Tamer makes this weird aside. Tamer, they're talking about some logistics of who brought what for the exhibit, and they're misnumbered. And Mindy was having a conversation saying, oh, the exhibits are over here. And Tamer's like, oh, okay, are they there? Like, and then Mindy's like, oh, they're over here. And then Tamer says, I prefer that Mindy communicate through her attorney, otherwise it makes me uncomfortable, which is really random, but he did that. And then Mindy goes on to continue her testimony. She said, I've received various late night buzzes on my buzzard, of which my name is attached to that. I had to change that. And I had to remove it because of fear. And then another video is played. I was talking about the miner and the shields, right? So another video is displayed as an exhibit where ZDT says, Mindy is using miners as a shield. And he says it 4 times. I'm going to change the title to this fucking thing. Mindy uses miners as a shield. And then Tamer objects somewhat successfully and asks, what is the relevance? And the attorney, Mindy's attorney, says this was uttered days before the hearing. He was using Mindy's name. And the judge interrupts and she says, whether or not Mindy feels harassed on this specific thing is irrelevant. This is overruled. Mindy says this is relevant, she says this to the judge, because it hinders my ability to work with children in my field. The judge asks her how. Mindy says if they searched my name, his intention is to put my name in a negative connotation with minors. And then the judge says, well, did anybody call saying you lost a job opportunity because of it? And Mindy says, no, I took off from work to care for my mom, and I didn't decide to apply for future jobs because of this. And the judge says, this seems cumulative and less relevant than others. I don't understand the threat of this video. Others were more troubling. So this is what I said last time in the first part, right? So the judge didn't buy this specific thing, but she did endorse other things that seem valid enough to grant a restraining order. Remember, if you have 3 out of the 5 that are valid and 2 seem silly, all you need are the 3. All you need is 1. right? So if you got 3 or 2, then you're doing pretty good. Mindy's attorney asks, what, McKeon, I'll just say McKeon now, what meaning do you take from a human shield? And Tamer, again, objects to relevance, and the judge agrees with Tamer, and the judge says, I don't see this as a threat. Is there any outside context I'm missing? And the answer is no. Then another picture is showed, Mindy, the Crime Watch picture. This is Big Dog, who goes by a lot of aliases and is not friendly with a lot of people. And he has a Crime Watch thing on Twitter. And the judge says, what do you know about this account? And Mindy says, he tagged law enforcement and tagged my name in this account. And then the judge says she didn't feel that was legitimate too. Because the judge says you haven't connected Crime Watch to having ZDT himself, and she says, Mr. D'Amato, I'm saying ZDT for this, for having ZDT himself direct any actions. Meaning that if there's a separate page from Big Dog, if it wasn't made by ZDT or ZDT didn't tell him to make the page, then she's not taking it into account. Mindy says, Crime Watch is this user Big Dog. He's been in ZDT chat, where ZDT issues directives. And the judge says, it doesn't tell me he is directing people to do this specifically. Another exhibit is played. And ZDT, they play a video of ZDT talking. Mindy lied about her sister to sell her book. Maybe we'll FOIA her sister's autopsy report. You want me to do that, Mindy? Go to the case where you said it was a domestic issue, where she passed away. In reality, her mom sued the doctor because she OD'd on drugs. Hey, bitch, I'll find that guy and interview him, meaning the boyfriend of Mindy's deceased sister. His name has been besmirched. Tamer objects to the using of this video because he says that this isn't harassment of Mindy. And the judge says, you don't feel... Mindy says she could feel harassed by having her deceased sister brought up. Overruled. So Tamer is saying, well, this isn't Mindy being harassed. And then the judge says, bullshit, overruled. McKeon asks Mindy, how did all this make you feel? Mindy says, terrified, and none of this was true. And Mindy's attorney asks, since your sister died, have you continued to mourn your sister? Tamer objects. Tamer objects, saying it's leading, and the judge sustains that. So she rephrases her questions. If those photos were exposed, how do you think it would make you feel? Mindy's attorney asked Mindy. Mindy says, well, we weren't allowed to see my sister's autopsy photos because her body was so disfigured upon death. To have those photos exposed gave me heart palpitations, even the thought of having them exposed. So that's pretty powerful unto itself. So this is the part that the judge is buying. The constant exposing autopsy, exposing photos about her sister, and then saying Mindy has been lying about the death of her sister. And then the video is replayed with Mindy's mom on the stand. And Mindy's attorney says, did you see a video about ZDT talking about your daughter's autopsy? Then it gets replayed. How does this make you feel? And the mom is crying at this point, and the judge interrupts and directs Mindy to give her mother a tissue. So you can see that the judge is sympathetic. The judge is kind of feels the pain that Mindy's mother very eloquently, and she probably didn't realize it in the moment because she felt so much pain. And, she's not being cynical, but I'm the one that can be cynical. The pain was incredibly smart to get the judge to be sympathetic towards her and to really viscerally show the damage that ZDT caused. It wasn't intentional, but it was hardcore tears and a real breaking in her voice, which shows obvious duress. So Mindy's mother was not trying to do this, but strategically, this might have been the moment that won her the case. I think she won it before, but this solidifies it, in my opinion. So she says, has listening to this video make you feel? And Mindy's mother says, it makes me destroyed. I had many health issues. I had herniated discs. My health has gone down. Another video is played. ZDT is talking in this video. We need to be more savage. We must scalp, kill any of these motherfuckers we can. We know where you are too. You want to fuck with me? You get killed. And then he mentions this cop, and he says that a cop is going to kill Mindy. This cop is going to kill Mindy. He gives her to a gang to run a train. Maybe they'll sell Mindy to a cartel. And they'll make Dan edit the video because they're all with streets. He brings up Dan Walks LA. And we'll have a cum towel for Mindy and her sister too. And for Mindy's mom, we'll have a cum towel with stitching in it because she was bleeding and needed stitches. So we'd have to get cum on that too. Meaning ZDT's going to make a cum towel, but also put stitches on it to mock the fact that, so gross, to mock the fact that Mindy's mom had to get stitches during cancer treatment. If this isn't convincing, guys, I don't know what is. ZDT is continuing in this video. He says, so if anyone can get an autopsy of Nikki, that's Mindy's sister, and of those photos, we'll make sure to put it on top of a little 3D cake. And then, he talks about, like, if Mindy was in jail, she'd get bukkakeed. I don't even want to repeat. Some of this is so gross, I'm not going to repeat it. And Mindy's attorney asked, how did this make you feel, to Mindy's mother? And she said, scared for my kids. He's a self-proclaimed psychopath. I already lost one. I don't want to lose another. Another powerful moment. Then another video is ZDT. They present it of ZDT noting the insurance company that the mom works for. Noting the name of it. Noting the location of it. Mindy's mom talks about this. She says, I was getting weird phone calls. People saying that they were my clients. The judge asked what months were the call. Mindy's mom says September and October. And it was so scary to me, I stopped going to the office. And then another video shows of ZDT again sort of making a threat. It's the end of the Goblin Squad. I will wipe them off the face of the earth. I'm serious. Mindy and Dan thought they were invisible. You motherfuckers had the gall to think I wasn't going to come after you with everything I have. Every family member you have, it's open season. This isn't violence. This is death by 1,000 paper cuts. And then Mindy's attorney says, when you heard this, what was happening in your life? And Mindy's mom says, ZDT made me fear I'll lose another child. I'm scared for my family, afraid to leave the house and go to work. He also mentioned someone's car was vandalized and said it was him. Of course, we're talking about Lara. And there's some discussion. The judge says, well, is a car that relevant? And there's back and forth saying yes. And they mentioned it was Lara's car because there's pretty tangible proof that ZDT directed that to happen. And again, that's an outside action, right? Somebody's car got vandalized. This isn't a war of words. Somebody's car got messed with. Lunch happens. Now we're at part 2. All this conversations about the chat, right, that I mentioned. And so Tamer's now speaking with Mindy's mom at this point. Before it was Mindy's attorney, now it's Stephen Tamer. And he says, oh, pardon me. This is a long to read. Tamer asks, why are you in ZDT's chat? Mindy's mom says, a police officer told me to watch it and see if there's any more. Tamer says, oh, so my client never said, hey, come to my channel. This is another big argument that I forgot to mention. The other big argument that Tamer's trying to make is that there was no invitation, and he tried to say that the chat was private, which is not true. The chat is public. But ZDT's trying to say there was no invitation, you haven't heard about it, then you would have never been bothered by it at all unless you had heard about it and we didn't invite you to hear about it. Stretch of an argument. Tamer asks, and has my client ever emailed or directly contacted you? Mindy's mom says no. Tamer says, how did ZDT say he was coming after your daughter? Did he ever say he was going to come after you or your daughter? Mindy's mom says, not that I know of. Well, what about any friends? Mindy's mom says, yes, Lara with the vandalism of her car. So, whoops, got him on that. That happened. Then Tamer tries to get it back. Has my client ever contacted Mindy? Mindy's mom says something. She doesn't speak legalese, but in this moment, she was speaking legalese very effectively. Because Tamer said, has my client ever contacted Mindy? Mindy's mom says she contacted Mindy by saying her name 50 times. Usually, If you don't contact the person, you're scot-free, unless you're talking about the internet world where somebody brings up your name over 50 times. Mindy's mom got very specific with that. That's contact, and it's a public forum. That is a sense of mentioning somebody publicly is a sense of contact. That was a very smart distinction to make, and something that I think the judge would have given it to Tamer. Not that it would have mattered that much, but now with mentioning what is the definition of contact, one would argue that ZDT has contacted Mindy. Tamer says, this is not what this is. This is a simple back and forth. Her friends are doing the same things that my client is accused of doing to them. And then Tamer asks, well, who's Solomon? And Mindy's mom says he's a 16-year-old boy. And Tamer says, who is Scott Hocksetter, a.k.a. DOA? Mindy's mom says he's some guy against Scientology. Tamer says, are they friends? Mindy's mom says, well, previously, I don't think they're close anymore. Tamer then says, as I read before, and who is Aaron Marine? I called the guy Henry Mancini, confusing him with the Moon River guy, but I didn't butcher Henry's name that badly. Who is Aaron Marine? The judge interrupts, and she says, this isn't relevant. If other people are mean to ZDT, he did the same thing, and none of them are Mindy. And Tamer interrupts and says, this is a group effort to harass my client. And the judge says, well, why are you asking Mindy's mom? I'm not going to say her full name, but why are you asking Mindy's mom? And Tamer says she's a moderator of her channel. And the judge says, so there are people that have made direct, and the judge says, wait, so there are people that have made direct threats to Mindy? Or sorry, there are people that have made threats directed by Mindy to your client? And Tamer says she's involved in it. And the judge says, nope, moving on. So the judge just shut it down. Once the judge directly asked, has Mindy directly threatened anybody? And then Tamer says, no, but she's involved in it. The judge throws that entire conversation out the window. No, moving on. You're not, and the judge is continuing talking to Tamer. No, moving on. You're not getting to anything relevant nor laying a foundation. So then they move on. Tamer says, did Henry, Solomon, or DOA file an RO against my client? Does she know those people? Does she know a chatter named Johnny Bravo? And then the judge again interrupts and say, how is this relevant? But now the news of the restraining order with other people is officially, the judge is now officially aware that 2 other people have successfully gotten restraining orders against ZDT. Finally, Tamer asks, have you ever used the username Tiger King? Fucking Carol Baskin, that bitch Carol Baskin. Tamer says, Mindy's mom says yes. Tamer says, how many times has Tiger King participated in the chat? Mindy's mom says, hard to say. I later gave my computer to my nephew. Tamer says, does your nephew know about the situation? Mindy's mom says, not about the RO, but about the harassment that ZDT has done, yeah. Tamer says, who is Aaron? Mindy's mom says, an influencer I never met. Tamer then says, did Aaron accuse ZDT of being a Scientologist? So another big thing is, because a handful of people have accused ZDT of being a Scientologist on the internet, therefore Mindy is responsible for all of it. And the judge says, so you're saying that they're attacking ZDT for being a Scientologist, and on the other side, the threats are gang rape threats. So meaning these aren't similar. Tamer asks Mindy's mom, how many times have you said you will party when my client goes to jail? Isn't it true you said if my client is arrested, that it should be posted on YouTube? And Mindy's mom says, no, I didn't say that. And Tamer says, are you saying no to everything? And then actually, Tamer says this, so you're saying you're a liar. Tamer actually says, so you're saying you're a liar. Another picture is shown of Johnny Bravo, and there's a picture of Johnny Bravo showing the outline of ZDT's apartment, which doesn't show much because it doesn't show his address or anything. But that was used, a picture of Johnny Bravo. And then Tamer says, do you know Johnny Bravo? And Carol says, I don't know who that is. Tamer says, who's Kirsty? Mindy's mom says, I don't know. She's a mod, I think. And then Tamer says, oh, you're pretending you don't know. There is a song on Mindy's YouTube praising Kirsty. You don't know who she is? And again, Mindy's mom says no. Tamer says, do you know who Dodge Landesmann is? Mindy's mom is very sweet. She said, oh, that cute boy over there. Friends with Mindy. And they said, are they close friends? She said no. And then all of a sudden, I thought they were going to ask more about me. And then Tamer asks, what are magic mushrooms? Do you know your daughter took them? And then the judge says, how is this relevant? And we talked about this earlier. Tamer says her state of mind. And the judge said, someone doing a type of mushroom isn't relevant at all to this case. Then Tamer says, how many flyers did you pass out featuring my client? So ZDT is about to accuse the mother of also passing out flyers. And the mother said, from my bedside, hooked up to a machine while I was getting care for cancer, 0. And that's where it ends. McKeon, Mindy's attorney, tried to get another TRO. The judge quickly denied it. So that was, I mean, that's to be expected, but still a bummer. And that's the deal. You got most of the dirty details. I think it looks good for Mindy. You see the defense that ZDT and Tamer are trying to make. They're a gang. They've been gang stalked. The actions of Aaron Marine as well. Those despicable people that and of evil Johnny Bravo, a cartoon character. That because of that, ZDT has been deeply harassed, and none of this is relevant. And they never contacted Mindy. So how's it on them? And it's a Hail Mary after Hail. I think it's a guarantee for Mindy to get this. But we'll see. It will be on the 10th and the 15th of October, so I'll probably see you for the 15th. Again, it's just expensive to fly in and out, and I got some other cases. I'll be in October, I'll be in D.C. to cover the Clinton and the both Clintons testimony about the Epstein situation. I think that would be cool. And then before that, I'll be up in Boston in early September for the sentencing of a corrupt Boston councilwoman, and then for in Connecticut for Long Island Audit, who has a case. It's kind of the streets of LA of the East Coast. So that'll probably be next week, September 9th or something like that. And we'll be back on the Scientology stuff in October. Au revoir. Take care.